와주셔서 감사합니다. 그럼 이제는 영어. 영어 폭탄. So I'm here to essentially share with you a bit about 카페랩 and alternative milk, and in my opinion, how to make the perfect latte with alternative milk, or any milk for that matter. So Cafe Lab, it's known in Australia as Milk Lab, and it's the biggest alternative milk company in Australia in terms of volume, with the almond milk being one of the more popular options. So a lot of you, if you've worked with alternative milks before, you'll know that there's lots of brands, and I've personally worked with a lot of different milks before, and it's always really hard to find a milk that performs well and that also pairs really well with the coffee. So with all of this in mind, Cafe Lab was developed with baristas in collaboration with food technologists, roasters, in order to create a milk that really highlighted the quality of the coffee that people use, whilst still bringing those sweet, creamy elements that we all love in milk-based coffee. So now I'll share with you a little bit about how to work with alternative milks. When it comes to steaming alternative milks, I steam them exactly the same way as I would full cream milk, especially Cafe Lab. The only thing that I change, depending on the milk, is how I pour it, and it's a very slight difference. So I'll walk you through that too. So a lot of people wonder why when they combine alternative milk with their coffee, sometimes it curdles, right? The texture gets a bit weird. So the reason for that is the acidity in the coffee. When it comes to Cafe Lab as well, when you take it out, make sure you give it a really good shake, as you want to integrate all the proteins and all the components, so every time you steam it, you get a consistent result. So as I said before, I don't treat it any differently when it comes to steaming. So the approach I'm about to show you is how I treat all milks. So the very first thing you want to do is you want to fill your jug up to just above where the spout meets with the pitcher itself. Any lower than that, and it becomes difficult to control the whirlpool, and most likely you'll finish with milk that's quite bubbly. And if you go higher than that, it becomes hard for the steam one to actually spin that milk around. How to work with the steam one. Alright, so very first thing you want to do is purge the steam one of any water that you don't want to be inside the milk. So if you watch closely, you'll see some water come out. And then from here, you want to take the steam one and pull it straight out towards yourself. Make sure it's not on any weird angles that are going to work against you. I have the steam tip half submerged. So this tip here, I've got it sitting halfway into the milk. Now, if you imagine this to be my line of milk, if my milk is sitting too high, the steam one doesn't have the ability to introduce air into the milk, and it's going to be too thin. If it's too low, it's going to create really big bubbles that I don't have the ability to break down. So my milk won't be very silky when I finish. Okay, so I'll walk you through the process now. So purging the steam one comes straight out, lock it in, it's in the middle, half submerged, tilt to the side, turn on the steam one, and once you have enough air, slide the jug up, keeping everything in the same position until it's up to temperature. And then from here, if you have any small bubbles in the jug, you can just tap them on the bench, and you should have really nice silky milk. The thing with milk is, as soon as you steam it, it wants to separate. So think of like a beer, for example. When you pour a beer, it separates the foam on top. Milk's exactly the same. So what you have to do when you're steaming your milk is, number one, work with it really quickly before it has the chance to separate. And number two, before you pour it, make sure you reintegrate the milk and foam together by swirling the jug. So I might show, maybe just a couple of people want to come forward, I'll show you what I mean. You want to swirl it around, and notice how the milk gets really silky, and I break up that lump. Now, what happens is, if I try and pour milk that's already separated, the milk will come out underneath, leaving the foam in the back of the jug. One of the things that we all love about milk coffee is it's very dessert-like, right? Especially with these milks here. If you taste it, you can't tell where the milk ends and the foam begins. It's a really nice texture and it's very lush. If your milk is separated when you try and pour it though, you don't get the same texture and it's really hard to pour latte art. So there's two things I do to help create more stability when you're steaming milk. So the very first thing is what I told you, to make sure you lock the jug in so it's not floating around. Lock it in against the steam one. And the second thing is a lot of baristas will take their pinky finger and they'll rest it on, say, the drip tray, like that. Looks something like this. Yeah. You have much more control over the position of the jug. So there's no chance of you lowering it and introducing more bubbles. Okay, so we've spoken about steaming. Let's move on to pouring. I know there's a lot of theory here, but I want to get through all the talking first, so that way we can focus on the practical stuff. So when you pour milk, there's generally two phases. The first phase is where you're lifting up all the color and flavor. It's like creating a canvas, right, for your latte art. Yeah. So phase one, bring up all the color and flavor, and then phase two is where you actually pour your latte art. So during phase one, it's really important that you pour high and slow with a thin stream of milk. So if you pour too quickly, what happens is the milk will hit the bottom of the cup and it will splash up around the side, washing out the color and flavor. And if you're too close as you're pouring, what happens is the foam just rolls out on top and you end up with a white surface and you can't taste the coffee flavor. So if you pour with a bit of distance, maybe around 10 centimeters, the foam will slip below the crema, lifting up the color and flavor. Once you're about halfway full to 3/4, then you can start pouring your latte art. And when you want to pour your latte art, it's the other way around. So instead of pouring high and slow, you want to pour close and fast. So generally I'll finish phase one, I'll stop, and then I'll start phase two, and I'll get as close as possible and pour a little bit faster because I want to encourage that foam to come out of the jug. So what I might do is I'll prepare a coffee now and I'll walk you through the process. So generally most professional baristas or most specialty cafes will use scales and they'll have a recipe for their coffee. So you can think of it like making a cake, for example. You know, when you make a cake, you count how many cups of flour, how many eggs, how much milk. It's the same sort of thing. And we always start with the espresso first because, as we know, milk has a really short lifespan. So as soon as we steam the milk, we want to be pouring it straight away. Yeah, so what I'll normally do is I'll add some milk to the espresso and then I'll swirl it again. Yeah. And what this does is it helps you achieve a better color on top and more clearer latte art. Okay, so as I said, adding a small amount of milk. And then high and slow, pouring on top of those white spots. And then phase two, low and fast. Let the top roll out into the center. And pouring it like this allows you to have a really clear contrast between the coffee flavor around the outside and the milk in the center. I'll do a latte with almond milk and I'll talk about how to pour that to get the best result. So the proteins in almonds have a slightly higher tendency to curdle when combined with coffee. So the goal when pouring almond milk is to balance out the acidity in the coffee. So if I pour it too slowly, what will happen is the milk will curdle because the acidity is too high. So what you need to do is at the beginning, add the milk really quickly to balance out the overall acidity before it has a chance to separate. I don't change anything when steaming. When I'm pouring, I swirl the espresso and pour the milk quickly down the side. Any bubbles, I'll just tap on the bench, and then you can go in and actually pour some latte art.
아까 오트를 할 때랑 굉장히 다르죠? 처음부터 굉장히 빠르게 아몬드 밀크를 부어주셨고요. 그 다음에 라떼 아트를 한번 쳐주는 것으로 거품을 깨시면 됩니다.
So I might just demonstrate two iced coffees and I'll give one I'll give them to the people in the audience. So iced coffees are, as we know, nice and easy. Most people will usually start with the milk first and then pour the espresso on top. And this is usually from a presentation point of view. So a lot of cafes like the look of the espresso sort of dripping down the glass.
사실 나중에 붓게 되면 이제 우유 밑으로 사실 떨어지는 그런 광경을 볼 수 있기 때문에 굉장히 예쁜 모습이 연출이 됩니다.
So does anyone want to try an oat iced latte? There we are.
네, 이렇게 빠른 두 분이 계십니다.
And how about an almond iced latte?
아몬드 미리 점수 받겠습니다.
There we go. 감사합니다.
네.
So Samyang's actually prepared two signature drinks. So I'll show you how we can use these milk in combination with other ingredients as signature items that you could serve in the cafe. So they both start with a 30ml shot of espresso. So I'll prepare the espresso first. I'm doing 22 grams in, and this looks like an 8-ounce cup. Great, so I'll pour the shot in, and I'll grab some ingredients out. So the first one is a hot drink, although you can have it cold as well, and it uses, with the syrup, it's a really nice sweet floral characteristic. So I've added 200ml of milk to the jug, and I'm going to add 3 pumps of syrup, and that will give me 30ml of osmanthus syrup. So all I need to do now is I'm going to steam this milk. I'll pour it just like a regular almond coffee. It's almond milk, by the way, and then I'll top it with some osmanthus flowers. So because this one's an almond latte, I'll pour it a little bit fast down the side.
아몬드 밀크로 만들고 있습니다. 밑에 먼저 붓고 친 다음에 라떼 아트 하고 있습니다.
Pouring latte out as per usual. That's okay. I'll carefully sprinkle it using this, and then you just top it with a little bit of these flowers. These are dried osmanthus flowers. So this is a drink that's quite sweet and floral and yeah, really pleasant.
Axil